According to the oldest records, 1,636 years passed between Adam and the flood. During every single one of those years, something walked the earth that was not supposed to be there. The sacred texts call them the Nephilim. For more than 16 centuries, they shaped how people lived, how they fought, and how they died. By the time the flood came, the whole world had been bent out of shape by their presence, counting the years that led to disaster. To grasp 1,636 years, think of it as 10 generations of one family, from Adam to Noah. And every single one of those generations lived for hundreds of years instead of just 70 or 80 as we do now. Adam lived 930 years. His family kept growing and spreading while he was still alive to watch it happen. And Methuselah, who was Noah's own grandfather, lived for 969 years, making him the oldest person ever recorded in the entire Bible. Some old Jewish writings say Methuselah's name carried a hidden warning. In Hebrew, it can be understood to mean something like, "When he dies, it will come." He became a walking countdown clock. Over those centuries, the population must have exploded. Some old calculations suggest that hundreds of millions could have been alive at once. This was not a tiny forgotten world. When the sky came down to earth, somewhere in the middle of those long centuries, something happened that the book of Genesis describes in just a few simple sentences. Even though those sentences describe one of the strangest events in all of human history, Genesis says the sons of God saw the daughters of men and took them as wives. From those unions came the Nephilim, the mighty ones, the men of renown. Their names spread across the earth. Ancient writings outside the Bible add more detail. Texts like Jubilees place this event on Mount Hermon. There, a group of heavenly beings called the Watchers descended from their proper place. Before they did, they bound themselves to a terrible oath. Then they crossed a line that was never meant to be crossed. These were not ordinary men disguising themselves as something else, and they were not just powerful kings claiming to be gods, because the oldest interpretations of this story say plainly that real heavenly beings abandoned the position God had given them, and the result of that choice spread across the earth like a sickness that nobody could stop or even slow down. Giants among ordinary people. Once these Nephilim were born, they did not stay hidden in some far-off corner of the world. The text makes it clear that they were everywhere, ruling over ordinary families and ordinary towns the way that wolves might rule over sheep. Later writings describe entire giant clans spreading across the land. Their names changed from place to place: Anakim, Rephaim, Emim. But the fear stayed the same. Centuries later, when Israelite spies finally crept into the land of Canaan to see what waited for them there, they came back trembling, and they told their people that they had felt as small as grasshoppers standing next to these towering descendants of the old giant lines, and so we know that even the leftover echoes of this race were enough to terrify grown soldiers. Imagine being an ordinary farmer in those ancient days, watching the ground shake every time one of these beings walked past your house, knowing in your heart that no human strength on earth could stand against what they decided to take from you. The records describe these giants as immensely strong, frightening to look at, and almost completely unstoppable. A plan to stop the promised rescuer. Here is the part most people miss. What happened on Mount Hermon was not just a strange accident. According to many old interpreters, it was a calculated attack aimed at something far bigger. Far back in Genesis, right after the very first sin in the garden, God had already made a promise that one day a child born from a human woman would come and crush the head of the ancient enemy once and for all. That promise meant that a fully human rescuer had to be born someday from an unbroken human bloodline. If every family line had been corrupted, that rescuer could never have been born as the prophecy required. That is why many scholars see the Nephilim invasion as a strategy. Stop the bloodline, and you stop the promised savior. That is exactly why the Bible takes such great care to describe Noah as a man who was whole or complete in his family line. A Hebrew word that some readers believe points directly to the idea that his family alone had managed to stay free of this corruption. This makes him and his sons the last pure thread connecting all the way back to Adam, the flood that reset everything. By the time God finally decided to act, the text says that every single thought in every single human heart had become evil all the time, without exception and without any relief, and that kind of total corruption is almost impossible for us to imagine today. So God told Noah to build a massive wooden ship, and Noah spent decades hammering away at it while his neighbors walked by and laughed at him. When the flood finally arrived, it was not just a heavy storm that flooded a few towns. The text describes water bursting up from beneath the ground at the very same moment that water poured down from the sky above, undoing the careful order that God had set up at the very beginning of creation. Every giant was swept away, every Nephilim warrior, every violent ruler, every terror of that old world. And in 40 days, the reign of the giants came to a total end, the spirits that stayed behind. You might think that the story ends there, with the water finally calming down and the world starting fresh, but many ancient Jewish writings describe something far stranger happening after the flood was already over. Because the Nephilim were a mixture of heavenly spirit and human flesh, when their giant bodies were finally destroyed by the flood waters, their spirits did not simply disappear along with them, but instead, they were left wandering the earth without any physical body to live in. Texts like the Book of Enoch identify these wandering spirits with the demons of later tradition, restless, hostile, looking for bodies to control. They could never return to what they once had as giants. This idea even helps explain strange moments in the Gospels, like the demon-possessed man who lived among the tombs with such unnatural strength that no chain could hold him. Some readers believe his condition was a distant echo of the same destructive power that the Nephilim had once carried openly across the ancient world. Why this story still matters today. Jesus himself looked back across all of human history and chose one single comparison for describing the very end of the world. Out of everything he could have picked, he chose the days of Noah. He told his followers that people back then were simply eating, drinking, and going about their normal lives right up until the very day the flood came and swept them all away without warning. Jesus did not say they were ignorant. He did not say they had never been warned. He said they were unprepared. Ordinary life had distracted them from the danger in front of them. The horror of that ancient world was never that the evil inside it was unusual, but rather that it had become so common and so normal that people simply stopped noticing it was even there at all. And that is why the story of the Nephilim has continued to haunt readers for thousands of years. Not because it tells us about a strange world that no longer exists, but because it forces us to ask how easily any world can become blind to the danger growing within it. When corruption becomes normal, people stop recognizing it as corruption at all. They keep eating, working, and living as if nothing is wrong, until judgment arrives and reveals how far the darkness had already spread. The 1,636 years of the giants ended in judgment and in water, but the warning was never meant to stay in the past.